I took the understand myself test and have a question. Should I take the results as is and live trying to cope with them, or can I try to change them to some degree? All right. So the first thing is, I would say, well, take the results as they are to some degree. Now, it depends. Look, you got to be careful, because if you take a personality test like this and you're depressed, so, the future looks really bleak to you, the present looks bleak. When you look into the past, almost everything looks negative. You're not taking any pleasure in things. You feel bad, perhaps even worse in the morning. You can't see any light in your life. You're very self-critical. Perhaps you're depressed. Then if you're depressed, your personality scores are going to look, they're going to be skewed as a consequence of that. And so they might be more negative because of the mindset that you have when you take the test than they truly are. So I'm assuming with this answer that you're not depressed. So should I take the results as is and live trying to cope with them? Well, one thing is, you should at least give yourself some credit. It's like you're a particular way. So let's say you're low in openness, just for the sake of argument. Let's say you're low in openness and moderately high in conscientiousness. You're a more conservative person. You're probably going to be happier if you take a more conservative path in life. You're not, if you're low in openness, you're not that creative. You're not going to be interested in aesthetics. You're not going to be interested even in ideas to that great a degree. It's not your area of fascination. You're more practical and concrete, and perhaps, and also less flighty and less prone to creative error. There's advantages too, because most creative people are fonts of ideas that won't work and that will occupy a tremendous amount of counterproductive time in their implementation. That's the downside to creativity, false positives. If you're disagreeable, well, then you're going to try to work somewhere where competitiveness is useful. If you're high in neuroticism, then you're probably going to have to find a job where the stress levels aren't too high. If you're introverted, you want to find a place where you can work and spend a fair bit of time by yourself. You want to match your environment to your personality. That's adaptation to some degree. Now, if you're really high in neuroticism, for example, and you're too anxious, and then there are things that you can do about that. That's something you might want to, if it's really out of hand, say if you're 98th percentile or above, something like that, and it's also making you suffer because you're too anxious and too risk averse and too volatile, you might want to consider something like counseling to see if you can get your anxiety levels down, or to learn to meditate, or to learn to control your breathing, or to talk to someone to see if there's some physiological reason for that. Now, you can change, but like if you're introverted, you can develop social skills, but you kind of have to do them one at a time, because it's not something that comes naturally to you, and it might not be something that you developed as a child. You have to consciously plan a social strategy. So you might say, well, I'm introverted. I should go out with someone for lunch once a week. I should see friends twice a week, right? You need to make a plan for social interactions. And if you're extroverted and you can't stand being alone, well, then you might practice being alone a little bit so that you can learn how to spend some quality time on yourself and not be so dependent on the company of others. If you're an agreeable person, too agreeable, then you'll need to figure out what it is that you want, what you're resentful about, and what you need to negotiate about on your own behalf. And if you're really disagreeable, then you might want to think hard about consciously deciding that once a week or so, you're going to try to do something for someone else. And there's a research literature on that, actually. It indicates quite clearly that if you consciously plan to do something altruistic on a regular basis, it does seem to improve overall well-being. And I think that's particularly important for disagreeable people because they don't do that naturally. It doesn't come to them naturally. So I think that the general advice is find an environment where your temperament works. And then the more specific advice is, well, having said that, it doesn't hurt to expand your temperament. If you're introverted, you should be able to do what extroverted people do. And if you're extroverted, you should be able to spend time alone. You should develop those as skills. If you're an agreeable person, you should learn how to negotiate for yourself in a tough-minded manner. And if you're disagreeable, you should learn to take other people into consideration more. If you're unconscientious, wouldn't hurt to have a schedule like a Google Calendar to start working on that, because low conscientiousness is going to interfere with your long-term success. And if you're hyper conscientious, well, you might need to learn to relax a little bit and to make that a priority. So, and if you're high in openness, well, I don't have a quick answer for what you do if you're high in openness. Oh, I do. I guess I do to some degree. Try to focus on one thing to some degree, on one thing, and get good at that. Because when you're open, you're flying out all over the place laterally, and you can easily become a dilettante. So one of the things you have to do if you're high in openness is develop true expertise in at least one place. You can even pick it somewhat arbitrarily, given that you're interested in everything. Commit to something. If you're low in openness and a little closed off compared to what you should be, a little narrow-minded, let's say, and conventional, maybe you should read a book a week. Join a book club. That's a good thing to do. That's a good start. Join a book club, and open yourself up a little bit. Go see a movie now and then as well. That would also be helpful, and that'll widen you out a bit. And that's important. It's important for your career and all that sort of thing. You want to, your temperament puts you in a certain place in the distribution, and it isn't so much that you want to move the place, is that you want to move the variability, so that you can be what you need to be when the situation demands it. And that doesn't mean to blow in the wind. It means to be adaptable instead of constrained tightly by your biological predisposition. And you can learn that. It's painstaking. It requires a lot of effort, but you can learn it.